Welcome to Chapter 12, Session 3. In this session, we're going to start playing around with how do you modify style sheets and styles using JavaScript in your code. So we want to be able to do that. Let's get started. You can access any style sheet that is loaded into your document. You can also create new style sheets. Just the same way we created elements with our nodes, you can create new style sheets. They'll be embedded style sheets as opposed to external, but you can still do them. Again, I really try to refrain from using inline styles. Once you have the sheet, you can check different properties. You can see what the list of rules are by getting the object collection of rules. You can disable or enable it. You can set the media or the owner or the href, the different attributes that go along with that style sheet. So if you want to be able to add in a new style sheet with a specific URL, you can do that as well. You can also give a style sheet a title. Okay, there are 3 different types of style sheets: persistent, preferred, and alternate. The persistent is the default. It can't be turned on and off, and it doesn't have a name. So it always has a relation of style sheet, and it has no title. This means that it's always going to be on. This is where you're going to put your base or your reset styles. You're going to always make those persistent style sheets. Preferred style sheets are similar to persistent, but have a title and can be turned on and off, which means these are the style sheets you want to start with, but you might want to turn them off as you go along. The last one is alternate. These are defaulted off, so they generally are disabled to begin with, but you can turn them on. So in this case, if you have 2 different style sheets, which one of your projects is going to do this, you want to turn one on and one off, you're going to have to be able to do that, setting either the preferred or the alternate, and then being able to set the disable. We've built our entire outline. It's lovely. What else is there to do? In this project, we're going to be playing with the styles, and we're going to be switching out style tags. So we are going to have a script called switch that is going to allow us to switch styles for a page by clicking a button. So here, back over on our page, we are going to go ahead and add the script for the switch. Script source is going to be BC switch. And again, we're going to run that asynchronously. Let's go look at that code. In this one, we're going to be setting up some styles using the setup styles function, and then we're going to be doing some things inside of that. As you can see, it's already a use strict. Okay. This one is also going to have an event listener for loading because it wants to run its code on load the same way that the other one did. Remember how I said you can have multiple event listeners doing the same thing, because in this case we have 2 different pieces of code and we need them both to run. So window, add event listener, and in this case we are going to say on load, we want to run setup styles. Semicolon. So let's go build that. Our setup styles does not take any parameters. Doesn't need to. Our setup styles is going to link our page CSS over here directly into our code. You'll notice our page CSS was not part of the CSS that we already did. We're going to be adding it with code. So in our setup styles, we are going to have to create a link, then set the href and the relation attributes of that link, then append it to the header section of my DOM. So var page style is going to equal document create element, and we are going to make a link. So we're making a link element. That link element, page style, we are going to set the attribute of href equal to bc page.css. We're then going to set the page style, set attribute of our relation equal to a style sheet. Cool. Now we have to append it to the DOM document. Style sheets go in the top. They go in the header. So we want the head, not the body, not the general document as a whole. We just want the head. Append child, and we're going to add page style. Okay. At this point, we've added our event listener and we've added our page style. This is what the page style looks like. The point of this is to be able to show and to print it nicely without that whole thing that we just wasted all that time on, without our side navigation bar. So this is the printing for the page. However, we don't want that to be the one that shows up by default. So we are going to add one more attribute. Page style, set attribute, disabled. And that means that this will not be the attribute that's there. Now I could come up and check in my header, in my head, excuse me. Page is here, but it's disabled, which is fine. That's exactly where I want it. You notice it just added it to the end, which is fine. Just adding it to the end of the header is just fine. It didn't need to be put in between the script and the links, which is part of the reason why people are really picky about where they want to put things in order if they're going to be adding things as they go along. One of the things we can do to disable our style sheet as well is set the page style disabled attribute equal to true. That just makes sure that it's disabled. And then we can set it back to false if we want it to show up correctly. Now what we want to do is add some style buttons to the function to allow us to click and say, I want to look at the page view or I want to look at the web view. So we're going to add in some buttons. Okay, so adding these buttons. We're going to create a div to add in our buttons because logically it makes sense to add a div. And I'm going to be able to use that div and add both buttons to it and then just add the div to my DOM. I'm going to set the attribute of the ID equal to style buttons. Because in my CSS, that's going to do something. Okay. My web button is going to be a document, create element, input, web button, set attribute. The type is a button, and a web button, set attribute. In this case, the value or the text that I want it to say is going to say web view. Okay, so that's my web button that I built. Let's go ahead and make a page button. So I've made my two buttons. Let's go add both of those buttons to my div. Page button, web button. They're both added to my div. Cool. I need to add my div. Don't forget that part. So what I'm going to do for my div is I actually want this to be way up at the top. So I want it actually to be the first thing in the body element before anything else. So in this case, I'm going to go to my document, body, insert before, because I want it to be before. I'm going to insert my button div, and I want it to be before my document body first child. That way it goes way up at the top of the page before everything else. Okay, let's save that. Up at the top here, it made this div. See where it says web view, page view? They don't do anything yet. There's buttons. But it added those to the top before even the header. When we want to work with our different rules, our style sheet rules are our CSS rules. You already know these. Remember, when we look at style sheets or when we look at the rules inside of a style sheet, they're both arrays. So the example that we have here, we have referenced an individual element of the style sheet array, in this case, the 0 style sheet. You can choose to pick specific style sheets to use. The rules are also in an array. So in this case, this is the second rule, or the one at index 1. And then we can set individual items. You can choose to set the individual attributes of your style rule this way. So in this case, we have taken an H2 element that was color blue, and we have turned it into a H3 element that is color green, and its font size is 1.2. The H2 element goes away, or the style rule for the H2 element goes away and gets replaced with an H3. You can do that. You can modify style rules. The important thing to recognize here is that you can use the word style and then the attribute or property to set a specific value. You can also alter the selector text. So whatever the selector is, if you need this to be a pseudo element, if you need this to be a different selector, if you need to change it, you can change the selector text as well. You can also find out what is the parent style sheet, the style sheet that belongs to the rule. So given the rule, you can find its parent. This is why we like things in a hierarchy, because we can go up and down in a hierarchy, find out who our parents are and who our children are. One of the other things with rules is they can have a type. It can be 0, which is just an unknown. It can be a style rule, which is a 1, or it can be one of our at rules, our character set, our import media, our font face, or our page, if we wanted to do that. Working with styles. It's convenient if you can have all of your styles done before you start. However, sometimes you want to play around with embedded styles inside. So we are going to create a style tag that's going to be an embedded style listed up in the header, not an external style sheet. So we're going to create one. Again, in our setup styles here, we've got that all set up. So those are our buttons. And we are going to append an embedded style sheet. So again, button styles, we are going to create a new element. And this one is going to be a style. Remember, when we do an embedded style, we just make style tags. So that's what this is. That's what it's building. We are going to say, I want to document head, append child, and we are going to do button styles there. So we can append that. If I come over to my head, I have this style tag here that I just put in. That's what I just did. So we're going to be adding some styles to that. To add an individual rule, you need to get access to the style sheet. So you need to make sure you have the style sheet, and you can use the insert rule command function. In this case, it's just a string, but it's a string that also has a second parameter of what index do you want to put it at. So in this case, I have the string of H3, curly braces, color is green, semicolon, curly brace, and that whole thing is a string. Looks just like its CSS style rule. That's the rule I'm putting in, and I'm putting it in index value 2. You can set a rule into a specific location. Make sure it's a string and it looks just like a regular CSS rule. You can also delete a rule by giving it what index is that rule at. So this is where you can look through your rules and find ones at individual indexes and make sure you can reference what index your rule is at. You can also create an entirely new style sheet with a type style that'll be an embedded style sheet embedded to the document head. We do this in our code to show you how you can add a style sheet into that location. There is a concept called calculated styles that are calculated. So generally, the actual final rule of any element is a collection of multiple style sheets. Sometimes, if they are embedded or if they are created by code, you will see that instead of giving a style sheet page and line number, it'll just say calculated. It was created by code. We're not going to go through the effort of being able to show you where in the code it was created, because it could have been dynamically created and they may not have the ability to show you the actual code. So in this case, those are calculated styles. They're the final style that can be multiple style sheets, inline, embedded, and you can use the get computed style for any element to get what the actual computed style is. We are going to add a style rule to the different embedded style sheets. So what I'm going to say is I want to use the document style sheets. Remember, that's one of the collections that exists inside of the document. Document style sheets length -1. Okay, that is going to give me the one that I just added because I just appended it. It's going to be the last sheet in the list. And we're going to insert a rule. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to a second line because I think that makes it easier to see. So we're going to insert our rule here. The rule is going to be, if you have a div with the name style buttons, the position is going to be fixed. And we want to add this rule at the 0 position. And I can go put in the semicolon. So I have added a single rule to my list. If I hit save and refresh, you'll notice that it pushed this into a fixed position so that it would cover the top. And if I go to my F12, that div, style buttons here, and I will see that it is using a constructed style sheet. Constructed style sheets are built. They don't show up under regular context. It's constructed. So that's the one that's being used there. Okay, let's go ahead and add another rule. We're going to use the same concept, document style sheets, document length -1. You could make a variable for this and just say current style sheet or something like that, and then just hit insert rule on all of those. In fact, let me show you what that would look like. Actually, we can just do CSS. That works. Equals document style sheets, document style sheets, length -1, semicolon. Then I can go take all this out and just do CSS. Insert rule, and that way I don't actually need all the extra lines. So I can do my second rule, CSS, insert rule. In this case, it's going to be a little bit bigger. We are going to do a div style buttons if you are an input. Okay, curly brace. Remember, if we're going to have strings on multiple lines, we have to use the slash to be able to extend that quote. And that's going to build all of our styles for our input boxes, or our insert for our, and that's going to build all of our styles for our buttons right here. So when I hit refresh, whoa, suddenly they look different because I just did all the style rules for it. We're going to go ahead and remove those if we're going to do the print, because obviously if I want to do the print, I don't want to see the buttons because the buttons aren't going to be there in the print version. I don't want them printed on the page. The point was to be able to switch over, look at it, and hit print. So we're going to add one more rule. And in this case, it's going to be an @media print div display style buttons. Display none. Close. Close. And I want that to be insert rule number 2. Okay, so should look the same, but when I print, the buttons are gone, so they don't show up. These little things, like whether or not your buttons show up, are what makes a OK website look awesome. because it means that you put in some effort. All right. So we have done our style sheets and we've got our buttons. Let's go ahead and add some on-click events to our buttons. The first is going to be our web button. So the one that says web view on click. And we're going to go ahead and do an anonymous function. Inside of our anonymous function, we're going to say page style disabled equals true. So that's going to set the page style disabled to true. If we click our page button, we are going to set our page style disabled to false because we want it to show up. Might help if I did an equals button. Okay. That's all we had to do for our event handlers, because all we're really doing is turning on or off that. So if I click page view, it switches. If I click web view, it goes back. So it gives you the view of what the page view would look like. And then I can come over here to print, and it prints it like the page view. So it puts in the page view rules instead of the web view rules. And again, those buttons are not at the top, but it allows you to print it a little nicer than the website would. All right, so after we made our constitution, we made our outline, and we changed our style sheets. Our review project is going to be similar to the Constitution, where we're going to be creating a keyword list. This list, instead of an outline, is going to list all of the keywords in the document. So there's a lot of keywords that are important in Federalist Paper 10. It's one of the more important Federalist Paper, by the way. You're going to be using your event listeners. You're going to have a couple of functions, and you're going to have the list that's going to be in this side. It's going to have a rule to sort. Make sure you follow the rules. Each keyword will be a link that will jump to the specific keyword in the document, similar to the links that we did in our outline. Make sure you ask for help if you're lost. If this is really confusing you, if you're struggling, make sure you ask for help. If you're doing fine, that's cool. Finish your project. Go ahead and post it on your site if you'd like. Make sure that you submit something to D2L. So if you're not going to submit the entire PDF or the entire zip file, you have to at least submit a link. So some sort of a document with the link to where it's located. If that link is broken, you get a 0. So make sure that that link is actually live. Our case 1 project, this is going to be on our style sheets. So we're going to have this image or this website, and it's going to have these 5 little icons at the bottom that are different types of style sheets. And you're going to be using those buttons, those icons, to build buttons that are going to alter your style sheet. This is going to be similar to the web view, page view from the tutorial. So you're going to do that to alter different style sheets to show the client which different style sheets we have options for. Make sure that when it says one sheet will be loaded randomly, that you're using a random integer or random number generator to do that. We did random weeks ago, so you may not remember, but there's a function called random int that will allow you to get a random integer. You will be using anonymous functions. If on number 8 you do named functions, I'm going to mark you down because I want to see you use anonymous functions. When you write your own code, do them any way you want. But for this purposes, you're going to be creating an anonymous function. Make sure you add comments. If you just have a bunch of code with no comments, I'm marking you down on comments because comments are important. Whether you're looking at it in 6 weeks or whether someone else is, it's really important to keep your comments. Submit to D2L, and we'll go on to the last one. So this project is on a fantasy football statistics list. You've seen in websites where you have a list and you can click the header and it sorts it automatically. Yeah, you're doing that today. So you're going to be using JavaScript to have buttons, which are going to be the top in the header, and they are going to sort on command. You're going to have to get the array, populate it, fill it out, sort it, rebuild the table. It's not easy. There is a lot of steps to this, and it doesn't give you much help. Don't underestimate how hard this one is. It really is a lot of code and a lot of challenge. Make sure you think about how you're going to do it. Break your project down into sections. Understand what each section is going to do. If you spend an hour or 2 just writing comments for individual sections, that's good. That means that you really understand your project, and you'll understand it better when you actually go in and start writing your code. What I tend to do in this case is I will write what's called stub functions. I will create all of my functions, I will add in comments, and if they need to return a value, I'll return true or I'll return 1. Otherwise, all my function names are already in there, and then all I have to do is build each of those functions, which already have comments on how to do them. So it's a lot easier if you're organized to write your code. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with this one. Have fun. This is a lot for this project and for this chapter. So I'm hoping that you're getting it and you're doing fine. Ask for help if you need it. We're almost done. Only 2 more chapters after this, and then you're final. So have a great week. Call if you need help.